repeated thought that we have to be simple. Now let's talk about accessibility and how to measure whether the web page is accessible. Otherwise, sometimes there is error 404. I don't know, PÄTERIS JURČENKO, are you often encountering error? Because you are the one who is measuring accessibility. You don't want to have errors. And moreover, this is in digital environment, not as professional as you are, maybe.
Yes, we can hear you and we can see your presentation. So 404. Everything can happen on web pages and sites, and the story is, have you thought about what to do with it? Because I have told about checks of accessibility, how to test pages, and this testing is for the quality improvement. And today we are speaking about the terms. So in order for something not to happen, so we are talking about terms, accessibility and availability. So in the physical environment, we speak about accessibility. In digital environment, this term is already taken, and so we speak about digital accessibility. And so if you are looking for something A11Y, so 11 means the letters in between, the first letter and the last letter. And then there are very classical questions about mandatory things. Mandatory things don't work, but usually people start asking, so how many people with disabilities use it? And then there are also stereotypes saying that among us there are not such users. And there is a matrix of accessibility which shows these four senses. So this is hearing, vision, movements, and touch, and all these functions can be disturbed with some problems. And when we speak about accessibility, we have to understand that this problem is permanent. This is disability. But very often those problems can be temporary or based on a situation. For example, if we talk about some mobility issues, if you have a broken leg, it doesn't change anything in the digital environment. It doesn't change. But if you have some burnt your finger or something, you cannot use the mouse. And you need to start, for example, using your left hand. And if something is wrong with your both hands, then you will have to use tab buttons. And my favorite story is if I'm a parent with two children, and I need to go somewhere. One child is being dressed, trying to dress up outside, and I'm dressing the other child. And for me, it's very hard to focus because both of the children are requesting attention. So these are situational disturbances. And in order to call a taxi from an application, it is quite difficult. If you need to call to the specific address, you can do it with one hand. But if you need to enter some new address, it's not possible. So that's why I don't like a story about mandatory things, because if it's useful for some people it is critical, but they are useful and good also for others. So, for example, if you talk about ramps, for people with wheelchairs, this is intended for them to be able to cross the street safely. But on a daily basis, of course, it will also be used by parents with children, prams, tourists, and also cyclists. And this is the only way how to safely cross the street for a person in a wheelchair. And for others, this is also useful. And the same refers to the digital environment. And this is with everything. The classical example, for example, is subtitles. And I will tell about subtitles a little bit later. So the question is, which is important for us, and we heard in this conference quite a lot. So there are three examples why this has to be taken into account. This is in Cabinet Regulations 445, but this is just one of the reasons. If it's written in the directive and so on, and if you have some problems, for example, for a video there are no subtitles and it's not possible to fill in a form without mouse, but the story is not about violating some needs, but the story is that the person who has some problems, issues, cannot receive this digital service. And so this is a discrimination by a specific need. And so what we need to do is to ensure that the person with specific needs can receive those services. Also, we have to remember that it's very good to do good things. I am a UX designer. I research this interface and usability, and I want to create things which are convenient, comfortable for others. For my father, for whom it's hard to use the internet bank, I'm developing the interface which is convenient for him, and also the same for other people with some maybe mental problems. And then we also look at this economic angle. If this accessibility is very simple, then more people will access it, and automatically you have better ratio, better situation. And also we are talking about innovation, about products. For example, the deposit system. Already during the planning stage, you need to think how people with various needs and disabilities will use it. Then you will have advantages and you will not have to redesign it. And now about checkings, about inspections. They are mandatory for the public institutions. In Scandinavia, actually, it refers also to the private sector. Here, for us, it is only for the public institutions. So what do we want? We probably want to have automatic, for example, inspections, that the robot goes through it and everything is good. Yes, of course, there are such inspections, but they are only detecting only about 40% of all the mistakes. So we have to create additional, and we are not saying that one is bad or another is bad, but we have to find a way how to both test a scenario, what Inns was saying, that you, for example, you cannot fill in a login form or something else and you want to receive a service, and this testing scenario of this service is the most important. So if everybody is talking about users and that users are important, so one of the recommendations when we are testing accessibility is to understand who are your users and what are their scenarios, so that you are able to test according to this scenario. For example, we wanted to fix the web pages of all Latvian schools, and we tried to understand what is the ideal structure of those internet pages. So the first step was to define the audience. And so for a typical school web page, we defined the audience, we imagined the images, and we also describe them. So where does where do they come from? What is important for them? What they think, and also the context. So what is the goal they want to achieve when they enter this site? And when we have defined the audience, we can test scenarios. So it's not like that I have a page, there are 1 million or 1,000 sub-chapters and 1,000 some news stories. So do I need to check all of them to understand that it's good? No, we check only a selection. How do you organize selection? You arrange those pages in terms of popularity. So for a longer term, and search and look for 10 very different pages, and then check each of this selection. And then we can talk about the general quality of this site. So VARAM and the Ministry of Environment have developed these principles and guidelines, and generally those tests really help a lot to understand about the general quality of the homepage, looking at those 10 points. And some most essential things are subtitles, alternative texts, and headlines. Everybody knows that here tilde offers subtitles, and there is a sign language translation, and if a person cannot hear and use headphones, it is very hard to perceive the content of videos. So if you are creating a video and there is a specific content and you need to include subtitles, then subtitles are different. I will show you two examples. Here is one example. In this video, you cannot hear the sound, but you can already understand what is happening in this video and see how those subtitles, where they are placed. They are here. There is a high contrast, and the largest bonus, they are in Latvian. They were created through Hugo and then afterwards corrected. So if I'm a foreigner and I don't understand Latvian, I can also choose an option of automatic translation, and I can choose, for example, English, and watch this video already in English and to understand what they are talking about. And even if the sound is in English, this is ideal that we are able to translate. And so this is so-called closed caption. I will say this term. So closed caption, so the term in Latvian is slēptie titri. And another is so-called burnt subtitles. So you can see that they interact with this line. Sometimes this line is on top, and on a white coat it's hard to read, and even if there is a grammatic mistake, some kind of mistake, then you have to start from the scratch and start everything again. So it is much better to have them as a separate file. Next, about image alternatives. So if you insert an image in a homepage, you also add a description. What can you see there? And what does it give to you? So first, you in this description, you write what is described there, not just this is a descriptive image or something. Why? Because it is very important to think what you insert, what kind of images you insert, and also you need to think what does it give to a person who doesn't understand what's there. It will help people to understand what is in this image. And sometimes you might think why one needs to understand what's in this image. You never know when this is just a habit, because if it's a job advertisement, or if it is a poster about a specific event, or if there is some emergency information about the working hours of the institution, and all this is like an image, and there is no alternative text, and impossible to read. So, for example, in cases when the institution, for example, is closed at certain hours. So it is very important to also have this descriptive text. Next is correct use of titles. You know that you can click and select texts and they become as titles. if you have those titles, they help you to create a structure of the content. And also blind people and Google can easier understand what's included in this article. And second, if it is not an open article, but just a part of it, it makes you think about the structure of the page. So what are the blocks in this page? What are the titles, headlines? And it also helps you to understand what is the structure of the page. And structure, by the way, is half of creates half of the problems of user interface. And if you have the complicated navigation, it's very hard to understand what is placed where. It doesn't matter if you have descriptions for images. It will anyways be hard for you to find the way in this page. And so what should we know? We should know what people will be doing, the scenarios, what people will be doing in this page. And then with sorting methods or also with tests, you can ask the users to arrange them. And those are two methods. Everyone can do it. So this is like a little research, and it will help you to understand how people think the content has to be grouped in a homepage. So sorting the images and this also tree test is the way how to do it. And so if you ask from the departments to send in Excel file the desired structure, it will not be possible to create a convenient structure. If you, of course, have a very, very small homepage, there's nothing to sort. But if it's complicated, then you need to sort maybe all the chapters, maybe just one, services or products. And then there are the aspects of accessibility, 11. And where do you place the results when you have done it? Because there is this accessibility report. And it is said it should be, but the question is, why should it be done? Why should it be included everywhere? Is it a formal requirement or not? So one trick is that there are several things. First is that the European Union and everyone wants to tell that you as an institution recognize that this is important for you, and you include it in your webpage and say that this is important for us and we do it. Of course, they don't ask you to fix the page straight away, but it is very important that you say that I am testing. We have been doing something. So you insert a report that you were working according to these requirements, and what were the results. And also, if a person encounters a problem, they can, in this chapter under this title, find somebody they can turn to get help and or complain in case if something doesn't work. So this is all for me. I'm ready to listen to your questions if you have, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. But PÄTERIS, people with various disabilities, for example, vision, are they the ones you and your colleagues are thinking about them when you create web pages? So starting with the color of fonts and also gray background and yellow letters, so there is a contrast. So, in your job, do you know all these tricks to be able to create a web page when you are designing, and that you don't create barriers? We know that gray stairs are marked with yellow signs so that people with some vision impairments don't fall. Very good question. In the morning, Ivars from Aperons was showing a slide where one of the problems is that there is not enough knowledge in the sector. Here we are Also, comparison with physical environment. Not all the architects know all the demands and requirements. But good news is that we are slowly learning it. Some already know it, and large providers, Facebook, Google, Apple, they work with it very seriously. And others are scaling up. They are trying to achieve this knowledge because knowledge is publicly available, but it requires some time. So I would say that some of us know, but not everybody. Thank you very much, Peters, for those questions. And now you should press escape button or space back or something, not to delete your presentation, but because now